Hello and welcome to Skeindeer Knits. My name is Ellie and I am a Norwegian living and knitting in London. And you can find me as a designer on Ravelry under the name Skeindeer Knits. And you can find me on Instagram as Skeindeer. But as far as getting in touch is concerned, I would highly recommend the Ravelry group Skeindeer Knits, which is where we are taking part in knit-alongs and help each other out with knitting and do all the chatting and colour work babbling and whatnot. So highly recommend heading over there for any inquiries or whatever you may have that you want to say. You can just introduce yourself. There's even a thread for that. But yeah, mainly we are doing knit-alongs over there, and I have a number of knit-alongs going. Mainly the year-long knit-along, where we aim to make 6 pairs of colour work mittens for the duration of 2018. I hope to make this a annual knit-along, but this is the first time I'm running it and it's really exciting, and I'm really truly enjoying the chatter that's going on over in my Ravelry group about that. And I'm so glad I took the plunge and started this knit along, because it's been so much fun and I expect it to be a lot more fun throughout the year as well. And the other knit along I am hosting is the Skeindeer sock along, which is where you can just knit any of my sock patterns for taking part. You can do lots of them, you can do one of them, depends how many entries you want to have. And I haven't decided a closing date for that yet, but we can start discussing that in the group if you prefer. So if you are taking part of that knit along, we have a chatter thread for that, so you can head over there and maybe let me know how you are going. Are you currently knitting a pair? Are you thinking of casting on one very soon to be part in the knit along, or is it maybe time to start talking about a finishing date? We could have it the end of this month or next month, something like that. I don't know, it's up to you guys. And lastly, we are doing a knit along for my sweater pattern. This is my very first and so far only sweater pattern, but don't be alarmed, there are several more patterns out there. Now, I'm going to start this episode by talking about something rather serious. So first of all, I want to just say welcome to everyone, of course. Welcome to returning viewers and to those of you who are new viewers. This is quite unusual for me to start talking about this particular issue at the beginning of the episode. So if you want to get a sense of what I usually do, you just watch the episode that came before this one, or whichever is coming after. But today I have to have a bit of a serious talk, and it's important that it's coming up front, because it's important that everybody who's been part of this journey for quite some time gets to know this information. And so this sweater has to change name, and I'm going to tell you why. I debated for a long time whether to keep the name, change the name, and whether to tell you why. I am changing the name from Blåfjell to Vinterfjell. So that basically is a translation from Blue Mountain to Winter Mountain, which is super strategic given what season we are going into in the Northern Hemisphere, but that's the best name I could think of in the face of having to make this change. And now there are a number of reasons why I may want to do this change. There are some really good ones that I've thought about for a long time. One is that Blåfjell is a pain to spell if you don't have the letter O on your keyboard. In case you don't know what letter that is, it's that A with a circle on top. And it's hard to pronounce as well. People can do the fjell part, but the blå part seems to become either bleh or blow, or yeah, I just said it right, blå. Anyway, and there also, it came to my attention when this pattern had just come out that there is a pattern called Blåfjell in Icelandic, and it's a colour work yoke as well, and I don't want to be like infringing upon that and making a confusion there. So already early on I thought, oh, maybe that wasn't such a good name. I don't want to, you know, take that away from that other designer that made a lovely colour work yoke. But that is not the main reason. The main reason is that this is the name of a franchise in Norway, and I was aware of this all along, and I was warned about this when my pattern had first come out, that be careful about that, because there are restrictions to how you can use the name. And so I looked that up and considered how made this not be legal or be legal, and found that for it to be a problem, it needs to be sold as though it's part of the franchise. It's all about the context. You know, if I'd used the font that they use, if I'd used some of the other symbolisms that they use, some of the other words, you know, if I was passing this on as though it were that franchise, that would be illegal. But they cannot copyright the name. But they are trying to do that. They, instead of asking me, you know, are you trying to do that, they just sent a lawyer after me and just said, you are infringing about this franchise. Despite the fact that the name literally translates to Blue Mountain, and there are 8 mountains in Norway at least called Blåfjell, and there are even in the Norwegian translation of the Tolkien universe there are Blåfjell. But they're saying that this is a fantasy term, and I'm quoting them directly. They're saying it's a fantasy term that they came up with, and therefore they own it. Yeah. So they are accusing me of exploiting their franchise when selling this pattern, despite the fact that only 5% of the people that have bought my pattern, and thank you so much, only 5% of them are Norwegian and thus likely to know about this franchise. I have in no way, and deliberately so, marketed this as though it was in relation to that franchise. I've been very clear, just made no reference in the pattern, not on the page, not in the PDF, just made it clear it just means Blue Mountain. But they have just decided that that's the word that people mostly associate with their franchise, because in Norway that is the case, and to be fair, it's a Norwegian word, so. But it's just infuriating to me because I deliberately made sure it could not be confused as fake merch. And the fact that in Norwegian law you cannot copyright names and titles, you can only, you know, put a claim to your franchise, and this isn't that franchise, or attempting to be. And it's also infuriating because I think about all the Harry Potter this and that in the knitting world, and you don't see Warner Bros coming after those. But no, in Little Norway they have to come after one woman business. And at the end of the day, even though I'm in the right, they have more money than me. And so that's why the name is going to have to change. And what's more is that they only gave me a 3 working days deadline to say that I am going to change the name, and thus, you know, change the name. I have no time to seek legal advice properly to do that. I have gotten some unofficial legal advice from people who have those kind of qualifications to say that legally speaking you are in the right, but technically they have more money than you, and unless you want to hire a lawyer and go through that process, you're gonna lose. And I'm kind of like, yeah, it's not worth the fight for me. The name is not that important to me. Blåfjell, Vinterfjell, either is fine with me. I'm not gonna sulk over it, but I thought I'd be frank with you because that's what I always do. I'm not gonna talk more about this from now on, but I need your help. I need your help because I am now suffering a loss, so to speak. They are not losing out on me using this name, but I am losing out when having to change it, because for the better part of 2018 I've spent promoting this jumper as Blåfjell, and I am now very worried that this name is going to become a dead end on social media. And so what I need you to help me with is to make sure that doesn't happen, that when people are looking for Blåfjell they're gonna find Vinterfjell, you know, or that people aren't going to look after Blåfjell in the end, that Vinterfjell is going to be all that there is. So things that you could do to help me is, if you have say put a project page up on Ravelry, if you could change the name for it there to Vinterfjell instead, that would be lovely. If you have posted about it in on Instagram, for instance, if you could go back to that post or those posts and change the name there, and also if you could change the hashtags, that would be lovely. I know that I'm asking a lot, but it would mean the world. So if you can literally just pause the video now and go through your feed, click the post where you have posted about it and edit it, which you can do in the little corner there, and you get the text, you can change it. If you could change it to Vinterfjell, I can't thank you enough. And I put some suggested hashtags that you could change it to. So if you could change it to, say, Vinterfjell yoke, or if you prefer, Vinterfjell sweater, and of course Vinterfjell cowl, that would be lovely. And I'll be going through those hashtags and personally liking every post where you do that, and hopefully in the end, you know, the Blåfjell Cal and all the other hashtags will be empty of this sweater name, so that I don't get into any trouble, but more than that, that people who are looking for the sweater are actually going to find it under the name Vinterfjell. That would just mean the world to me, and you will be basically making up for all the promotion work I've been putting into this word that are now for naught. So thank you so much. And also, if you have talked about this in your media platform somewhere, say maybe you also have a podcast and you've talked about this before in terms of maybe knitting it or casting it on, maybe you were a test knitter, if you want to bring it up again and say that it's changed name, if that's relevant to your content. Obviously if it isn't, then just leave it. That's absolutely fine. I'm not asking for anyone to do any free promotion work for me, but I was just thinking, if you've already knitted it, you may want to put a correction up just saying, you know, this is the new name if you're looking for it. You want to knit the sweater I've done, kind of whatever suits your format. It would just really help me that people would now find the new name. That's my main concern. So I'm not going to spend much more time on that than I've done now. I generally have a lot of love for this company, so I'm not going to bash them either. I'm not angry with anyone. I just think this is a situation we could have avoided if they chose to talk to me before they had thrown a lawyer at me, because really I wasn't selling this as much, and they could probably have gone through the effort of finding that out first. And I do think they contribute a lot to Norwegian culture that I highly appreciate, so we're not going to be grumpy at them, okay? I'm just gonna say that, you know, being the big business with a lot of money going after the one woman business, it sucks. It kind of sucks. It would have helped if I've just early on just chosen a different name, because I wasn't like super keen on the name. It just seemed like the best one I had in my mind, and so many mountains have that name. Why is that a problem? Well, apparently it is. So the new name is Vinterfjell, and in association with that, I have come up with a kind of companion pattern just to kind of help get the word out. And yeah, so that pattern is a hat. And first of all, so many thanks to my tech editor who agreed to tech edit this ASAP so I can have the pattern out in time for this change, because it was sort of suddenly all very urgent, and I sat up until 2 o'clock last night knitting this thing, and it's not even done. But having made this in the evening, I'm sure you can see why it is relatively a quick knit. It was just a very late evening. And it doesn't have any rib yet, because I want to make sure I know how long the rib needs to be. So I've done the hat first. This is not how the pattern is written, so you know, do as I say, not as I do, as seems to be a designer slogan. So I just did this so that I can test, you know, this is how much the rib needs to be so that the hat will fit. So I'm going to write it as so that you start casting on the rib and you work up. So I think we're going to add about, I want to say 5 centimeters worth of rib, because then it can be soft, you know, not too tight, and it will fit around, and that will be nice. And I'm also going to write an option where you can have 10 centimeters of rib. That's 4 inches rather than 2, because then you can have a double folded brim. It will depend a little bit on how much yarn I have left since doing the sweater, but both instructions will be in the pattern. And so this is out by the time this episode goes out, and I will have a finished hat with rib and photos and the whole thing, and it's called the Vinterfjell hat. So let's just get used to the new name already with this new pattern, and hopefully, as I hinted in the last episode, there might be a Vinterfjell sweater for the little ones as well, which I thought I'd name Vesle Vinterfjell, which just means little Vinterfjell. And yeah, I hope you don't mind that this has too much winter connotations in it, even though it's summer. Maybe for days where you need to cool down a bit in the heat, it can be something that helps you with that on a psychological level. I don't know. I just like the sound of it, and this is not copyrighted, so not that the other name was copyrighted either. Copyright and franchise are two very, very different things, but if you have money, you can basically treat your franchise as a copyright. Anyway, I was going to stop talking about that. I'm not bitter, I'm just a bit... So there's the hat. It will look a lot more sensible with rib, believe me. It's, yeah, I had to show you that, you know, it's a real hat, not an imaginary hat. But Patterns on Ravelry, you can get it, and it's a great project to try out colors for the yoke before you actually do the yoke. So if you find that the colors don't work on the hat, you know, you don't have to spend so much time on doing the yoke. So thank you so much for any way that you choose to help me in this very frustrating change. I've tried to communicate where it's at with this company, and I have to say I was pretty proud of my response to them, and I kind of, you know, showed it to a couple of people who I know have some legal education as well, and they were like, damn, this is a pretty solid one, Ali. It's a pretty good one. I was like pretty proud. And the reply I got from them today, that was pretty weak, but at the end of the day they have more money. I don't mind in the end, as long as I'm not suffering too much of a loss with the hashtags and all the posts and the, you know, the sharing on social media that's happened in the past. That's now going to be a dead end. I think as long as we all work together to solve that, and you guys help me out, yeah, I think we will be fine. So that is that. I think I'm gonna cut that little rant short now. We can talk about the usual content, and I will hang this back on my chair again where it usually sits to kind of just be casually in the background. So I have been in a bit of a finish all the old whips kind of thing in the past few weeks. By the way, I skipped a week recording again. There was a heat wave, and I just don't function when it's really hot. You know, if it's like up in 28 Celsius and no air conditioning, and this room is south facing, that was my phone by the way, then it's really hot and I become a blob. So I decided to finish 2 projects. One got the frog. It was a pair of stockings, and I decided it wasn't really for me, it wasn't my size, it didn't really fit what I wanted. So instead it became a design of my own. Forgot about the pattern, just did my own thing, and we will see that closer to Christmas, I think. And also picked up another finished object that's been nagging me for so long because it's such a small project and I got them so far, and that is the Bonbon Mitts by Joji Locatelli. So I've done my first Joji Locatelli knit. There's one problem with this. I think I may have used too small needles. I went up a quarter needle size, but hindsight tells me that I should have gone up another quarter, if not more than that, because these are quite small. And when I look at the photo in Pom Pom, where the anniversary edition of Pom Pom, where this came out last year, they're bigger, they're longer that way, and they look a little bit more cozy, a little bit roomier, whereas when I wear these, they do fit, and I'm very relieved that they do. They're quite snug, but I do like it. It's really functional. Like, yeah, sure, they don't go up to here for whatever reason, but they fit really well. They're not sliding off. And you know, this is a wool and cashmere blend, and the cashmere can be so soft that it does just slide, and this one doesn't. So there we have it. Have I woven in the ends? No. Am I the kind of person that weaves in ends? No. But it will happen because it will look nicer. But there we have it. The Bonbon Mitts are finally finished, and many thanks to Marnie, so it's a Norwegian hand dyer, who just gave me this yarn because she had it in her stash, and that was so generous because we'd basically not met before. We met many times since, but yeah, that was really nice. This is not her yarn, this is Lana Grossa Pashmina yarn, but Marnie's is a hand dyer in Norway and has an Instagram page and all that stuff. And yeah, she was actually mentioned along with a lot of Norwegian dyers in Blåfjell Garn. And speaking of Blåfjell Garn, they have now all of a sudden decided to translate it into English after all. So the latest Circus edition can be found in English. The issue that I was part in just before Christmas is sadly not translated into English, but I believe we're closing into when it's been 6 months, when I get to sell my patterns independently of the magazine. I don't quite remember what the date is, I may have to look that up, but you know, then it will come out in English, rest assured. But hey, here we have it. Boop, boop. They're really nice and really soft, and I'm very impressed with this yarn because even though it's a cashmere blend, which is something I'm kind of skeptical towards, I'm not finding this very pilly. haven't worn them much yet because it's been so baking hot here, but they don't seem to be very pilly. They're usually pilly yarns. They even pill when you work with it, and this is so, it's pretty okay. It helps that it's a very well plied yarn with a twisted rib as well, although that twisted rib nearly got the end of me. Like, I felt like I spent less time on the flea cardigan that I was knitting last year than just this cuff, because while twisted rib is all well and nice, twisted rib we have to twist the pearls, which you have to do because it's meant to be folded up like this if you choose to, and it needs to be identical. And obviously on this side the knit stitches are pearl stitches and the pearl stitches are knit stitches. If you want the knit stitches to look twisted here, you have to twist the pearls here, and obviously if you want your work to look consistent throughout, you gotta keep twisting those pearls. And I'm not cut up for that. But I did do it. But God, thank you. There's a lot of renovation in this area, especially when I record. I also have a sneaky suspicion that I messed up the lace at the bottom here, because this looks very nice and this less so. Something didn't quite work out there, but do I care? No. Could have ripped it out, but I didn't. Guess that. I mean, they're functional. I like them. I should have woven in the ends before I showed you. I'm gonna weave in the ends and put a nice Instagram photo of. Yeah? Whoop whoop. Finish them, and yes, they are in one of my favorite shades of burgundy maroon plum words. Now I have been on a bit of a hat kick lately, as it will appear, and I've been on a bit of a yellow kick as well. And also, if you remember these mittens from last week, which I have kind of just ignored because they were just too loose. This is just a cuff, and for me it seems rather loose. I would really like to hear anyone's thoughts about that. If it's something that I should just frog and do again on smaller needles, I will do it. But if anyone's maybe knitted these mittens or similar kind of mittens or something like that and knows if this is just how it's supposed to be, because it's nice if you want to fold it over your sleeve, but it's pretty loose otherwise. But I was talking about what I just finished in terms of a hat, which is yellow. That's why we're talking about yellow. Done this hat, which is a Isolde cheek hat, which is so lovely and beautiful. And this color play, I can only hope to have this skill level. Look at that. Just the changes between yellow and grey. I did everything after the rib in one incredibly long sitting. It was the last really hot day here in London. I mean, it's gonna be more, but you know, lately. And I was just like, I'm not doing anything until this weather stops, and I'm just gonna sit here and knit. And I did, and then I had a shower. And so this is how that fits. It's a very kind of slouchy hat. There's the last few increases happen at the very end, so the slouch kind of continues for some time. And I really like it. I don't usually find hats that fit me. I generally have to modify them to be bigger, and once I do, they turn out to be too big. When I got to actually try this hat on at Edinburgh in the Isolde booth, and found that actually it's plenty big, and I could actually go down a needle size for the rib bit. Now my mistake was blocking this over a balloon, which I've never done before, and I've been recommended many times, and it seems like a good idea, but it stretched out the rib entirely, and so it doesn't really grip my head much. So I might fill a glass of water and just put the rib in it to soak it and then dry it and hope that it pulls together again. Not sure if that's gonna work, but I don't know, maybe I have experience with that. I'll be happy to hear it. But yeah, I can't pronounce the name of the hat, so it's just gonna be written here, but it is finished and it is lovely. And I could do this again. I could do it in other colors. This is so much fun, and I would definitely recommend it. The floats are short, so only 2 colors worked on every row. You don't actually decrease in the color work most of the time. It's like something up here, but it's kind of trivial. So you know what? Not that unfriendly to beginners, quite frankly. I think anyone could enjoy this and be very proud. It is a fairly tight gauge. Not too tight. My mittens usually are tighter, so you know, if you've done those, then this is going to be a breeze. And that's all I have to say for this hat. But I'm feeling hats a bit more lately, and if I didn't have so many knitting obligations, I would be in a proper hat roll right now, and I'd cast all the hats that I always thought I do, because I never have hat whips. They just get finished. No hat UFOs, just hats get done, because you only do one and they're fairly small. In case that wasn't obvious. Yeah, I forgot to mention the yarn used. This is Jameson and Smith 2-ply jumper weight, which is one of the 2 major Shetland yarn companies. And I did get this yarn in a kit from Isolde, so all of these skeins were included in the package with the pattern. And I felt for the longest time that I was playing yarn chicken with this colour, because there's so much of it being used here, and as I went up there's like less and less, and up here there was so little. But you actually don't need that much for it. Yes, there were dark spots, rows, rounds throughout, but you don't use that much, so I did actually have plenty left in the end. So if you're worried about playing yarn chicken with this, don't be. This was the largest size, so you should be fine. And yeah, I'm really happy. I'm happy with the fit. I want to do more hats. It was really good, and having a go at more so Feral style stranded color work as well, I really enjoyed that. As you will know from earlier episodes, if you've seen them, I have a bit of a gripe with referring to all stranded color work as Feral, because Feral is a very distinct style of color work that, you know, you're doing it a disservice if you're washing out the term. But here it is very appropriate to call this Feral. I would say it's the alternation between the small period patterns and the larger patterns, and the frequent changes of foreground and background color. This is Feral, and this is what is unique about it, and it's a skill that I'm trying to acquire and highly admire. So that's all I'm gonna say about that. And staying on this yellow kick, I think it's appropriate to turn to works in progress. I have knitted some socks. I am on sock number 1. And they're proper outside my comfort zone for a number of reasons. Well, first of all, they're vanilla socks. They're self-striping superwash sparkle yarn. Look at that. So I have kind of affectionately called these my sparkly bee socks. This is a EasyKnitter yarn that I picked up in Edinburgh Yarn Festival. Just like that hat, also an Edinburgh Yarn Festival knit. Also with the canopy shawl I showed you last week. So, you know, I am knitting up my Edinburgh yarn, and you're thriving yours on the needles. It's being knitted. Totes. So yeah, that's that sock. Just a vanilla sock, and I'm trying out another heel this time. This is actually the heel that I used in my Serbu socks. And yeah, I really love it. I've been kind of having long rants, I guess, enthusiastic rants to everyone I encounter nowadays over this particular heel. I almost had to stop myself so I wouldn't do it to a friend of mine who has no interest in knitting whatsoever, because I'm like, it's so cool, because it's like half short row and half heel flap, and it's got gusset here, and it's just, I really like it. But yeah, more on that in the Serbu sock pattern. I just really like it because you get a very shallow gusset, and that makes the stripes kind of consistent, and you work half short row heel like I said here, so you still get that room that you're missing out by doing the gusset a bit more shallow, and you get that heel flap that adds strength and structure to your knit so that they stay on and don't roll under your foot. But it's still kind of a short row type fit, because for me sometimes a high gusset can be a bit too much, but I still need room for my heel, which is the problem with short row heels again, unless I do them in colour work where you have more stitches. Blah blah blah. This works out really well. Very fond of it. I don't know what this heel is called, so I can only refer to my Serbu sock pattern. I've just known it for a long time, but I never put it in a vanilla sock before, and I really like it. I'm nearly done now. I'm gonna work in, I think, one more grey stripe, because then I can do the rib in yellow, black and orange, and then I will have grey yarn so I can cast on another one and have it look just like it. Again, I'm not super fussed about matching self-striping, and sometimes I will deliberately not make them look alike at all, because I'd rather have that than them looking almost alike. But here I've just been given this kind of opportunity on a silver platter to make them the same. So I will be doing that, you know, it's a skill, it's nice to do. So I'm working on a sweater design that is not color work. I could tell you all about it right now, but I'm trying to keep it under wraps. a little bit. Don't know how much I'm going to save. I'm going to show you because it's fluffy, and I've totally landed on a name that is relevant to that. I have totally and completely thrown myself on the silk mohair and wool bandwagon, but to put in a little hint, it's a different shape. I have not seen this shape, this construction used in the context of silk mohair wool blend like garments. You generally see, you know, raglans, and it's not my favorite, so I'm trying something else, and I am using some yarn that I really like with it. That's all I'm gonna say. And it's looking really well, and it's gonna be a very, say, trendy shape. I mean, it's gonna be very 80s with all this fluff. I don't know how well this will fit my figure. I think it will work, but yeah, it's interesting. It's just a completely different thing I haven't done before, and this should go into acquisitions, but I'm going to briefly talk about the silk mohair I'm using because I bought it last week. This is, and I got 5 skeins of this. It's Debbie Bliss Angel. It was just the silk mohair I could find at the time, and I know Debbie Bliss is not going to really do Debbie Bliss yarn anymore. She's going to do Lovecraft and only sell them on the Love Knitting and Love Crochet websites, which some people are disappointed because we should support brick and mortar yarn shops, but I totally see why she had to make that decision. So I'm not taking sides. I'm just saying this was perhaps not the wisest choice for a design, but you know what? You can use any silk mohair under the sun. You can use Shibui, Isager, Garnet Salg, Rowan. The list is long, and I will be listing a number of them on the pattern page when we get there. But I got this at Wild and Woolly when there were 5 purple skeins left, which will be just enough, I think, for my size. And I'm gonna just keep that a secret from now on. But now you know that I've been working on another sweater design. Saying that though, I'm working on a number of sweater designs. I'm gonna give you the lowdown. I'm working on that silk mohair thing. I am working on a rather ginormous garment. That's of course color work, because that's what I do. I am planning out a kind of different color work cardigan. Yeah, there might be a submission, I'm hoping. You know, you never know. I also want to do something for Christmas, but that's just been on the back burner for a long time, so it might be next Christmas. I don't know. I want to just do a basic burgundy cardigan as well, because that's just how I roll. Color work, of course. I think there's more, but I don't remember. But rest assured, I have a lot of garment designs in work, but I'm not sure which is going to come out first. In all likelihood, maybe the child size version of Vinterfjell, if that's what I choose to do. Maybe. So lastly, I have both another acquisition as well as a work in progress, because, and this is very exciting, I have been asked by the Fibre company if I wanted to apply for being a beta knitter. And so what I did was saying, okay, among all these colorways of your new yarn, I would be interested in these 3. Among all the new patterns in the new collection coming with it, I'd be interested in these 3. And I got my first choice in pattern, and I didn't really order the choices of color, so I just got one. And I think the reason I got the pattern I wanted is because the color I chose is a rather unusual choice. And so this is the project that's happening. This is the Hodgins Joy by Sarah Hatton, and little did I know that it's a slip stitch pattern. So I hope I'm gonna enjoy this, but right now I'm like, oh, slip stitches, huh? Oh dear. But yeah, I got through the rib, so that's an achievement. And I do love this shade of green so much, and I have so much love for this yarn. I'm going to tell you about the yarn in a bit, but first of all, I've never designed anything of Sarah Hatton. You know, she's one of the proper designers. She's been in the game for a long time. She's skilled. She designs for Rowan. This is someone who knows her stuff, and I would probably never have branched out to this kind of designer if I hadn't been prompted by this whole thing, and that's very exciting. And branching out is always a good thing in my book. Here's the yarn. This has been essential pull cake, so it's a little bit loose now, but you get a sense of the yarn. This is a Romney lamb's wool, I want to say in DK weight, and I absolutely love it. It's just the nicest. You know how I feel about lamb's wool. I've always been intrigued with Romney yarn, and I think it's very exciting that the Fibre company is going for this type of rustic non-superwash yarn. It has a soft tweedy look to it without actually having any tweeds as such. And it's got 2 plies. It's really right up my alley. I was a bit worried that it would be a kind of a rigid yarn, because sometimes these yarns can be. This is very lovely and gentle to work with. It does not make my hands tense up in any way. It's really nice. I love it. And the swatch, guys, the swatch. So I got the swatch here, and this is the slip stitch pattern that I'm talking about. It's very subtle, so I'm a little bit like, oh, I have to do this, and it barely shows, but you know, it will show when I think I have a bigger piece for it. And this is not what's going to be on all of the garment. It's a more pronounced pattern above this one, which I kind of think is also slip stitch. And here we have it. I just love this. When this washed up, this is not the kind of transformation that Holst does. When it's Holst, it's like all of the spinning oil comes out and the yarn becomes twice as thick, and it's just this weird magic thing. It's like a different yarn. This is not like a different yarn as such, but it certainly filled up and felt a great deal softer. And I didn't actually wash it even, I just soaked it. So who knows what's going to happen when it gets an actual wash. This is the back side, if that's of any interest. I don't know. But hey, I swatched. Got gauge. What's more exciting is that this is actually going to be, I think, my first green garment. And I don't really mind green. I don't know why I haven't done green before, you know. There are more colours than red and burgundy out there, but yeah. And now I'm going to do green. So just to sum up this bit of acquisition, I have acquired 5 of these and 5 or 6 of these. I got 5 and I got 2 small ones to swatch with. So it's kind of like 6. So that's an addition to my stash, but there is more. Because while I was shopping this in Wild and Woolly, on the knit night they had last Wednesday, I also managed to shop a little bit more. I picked up this skein of Lettlopi, and I've never bought Lettlopi yarn before. This is my first Lettlopi. I have knitted in Lettlopi, but never Lettlopi. And this was the only colorway they had in the shop that I was looking for. So the other ones I had to order online. And so simultaneously, while shopping all the other yarns, I bought some yarn online. And it's a lot. It's like 12 skeins of green Lettlopi right here. And you may recognize the colorway, because this is the colors that go for Blåfjell, which is a yoke designed by Dana Walla. And I want to make it. I don't know when. So why I bought that yarn now, I have no idea. But it's a thing I want to do. And now I have the yarn, so I can do it when I feel like it. But given all the commitment knitting I have committed to this summer, I'm not sure when it's going to happen. But it's nice to know that it's all ready for me to just grab and do. That's the sad thing about becoming a designer. You just get so much less time to just knit other people's designs. Oh well. So as you will see, I have ordered this from the Wool Warehouse. And so this is a bit of a controversial thing if you've ordered yarn online. And I have mixed thoughts about that. First of all, I am just kind of nostalgic that I got this order from the Wool Warehouse, because I always ordered from the Wool Warehouse before. I did not have the kind of budget where I could shop yarn at any of my local yarn shops. As much as I enjoyed supporting them, I just couldn't. And so I would get all my orders from the Wool Warehouse, and I have to say I have really good experience with them. Their customer support, well, I don't ever really need it, but it's really good. Their deliveries are very prompt. They come from kind of just the next city over from London, so I get next day delivery even when I get the cheapest option possible. And with this quantity it was free delivery even, because I think above £25 it is. And I'm just, yeah, I have really good experience with them. And sadly their closest competitors I have not had such good experience with. One of them had a delivery get lost in the mail, which returned way later, but this was kind of a thing I needed for a specific time, so that wasn't great. The other one has had deliveries lost in the mail continuously because they have such a terrible courier that they insist on using, even though I told them they're terrible, and everyone in London says they're terrible here. So at the end of the day, when it comes to these low price, big selection yarn shops online, I would go for the Wool Warehouse. There are lots of other online yarn shops that I highly support, but for like the big sort of commercial brands, I like them. But I still want to say that you should, of course, when you can, if you can, support your local yarn shops and the smaller online yarn shops, because they need you as well. Just kind of, yeah, got a bit nostalgic making my first Wool Warehouse order in probably 2 years, because I have since, you know, attended yarn festivals and yarn shops and kind of started to support those. It's a weird cycle of like making patterns and getting that revenue, and I can use that revenue to support those shops. It's pretty nice to think about in those terms. So I have a couple of acquisitions left, but they all have kind of stories to them, so I'm gonna take this a bit slower. But yeah, it's more storytelling now than the plain format, so if you're not here for that, that's fine. But it's gonna be knitting related, so you know. It's been a very yarn event rich week here in London. On Tuesday, Pom Pom Quarterly magazine had a very small event up in the London Loom in Stoke Newington, near Hackney Downs Park, if you know where that is, and it was really fun, and I got to meet a lot of people that I already know, who I didn't know was going. And what I also didn't know is that they had goodie bags for the first few people entering, and I was there bang on time and got this little goodie bag which consists of all sorts of funny things. But yeah, it says Pom Pom on the bag, so this could be a project bag. Came with a small cone of some yarn that looks quite up my alley, quite frankly. It says Knoll Soft Wool, the Nougat colorway, so to me this seems very much in the sort of Holst type yarn, maybe a bit thicker. Maybe not, I could totally use it with that. So this has gone to the right kind of home. Also got a bit of fluff. Not sure what I'm going to do with this, because it's not really my scene, but I have that. Got a jar of bits and bobs, which is good if you like that. Again, I think it's more for the weavers than the knitters, because it is the London Loom and it's a weaving place. There's a little advert here for a upcoming book by Emily Foden, so that's interesting. There was also a issue of Pom Pom magazine, which I already have, so that's going to go away in the giveaway pile. And a pom pom maker, and how appropriate is that, given that I just finished the bonbon knits from Pom Pom magazine that are supposed to have mini pom poms on them, and this is for making small pom poms. That's pretty cool. I have made lots of pom poms in my life, but I'm pretty old school that I just cut out cardboard and do it that way. But it would be cool to try out one of these fancy pants modern things as well. But yeah, Tuesday for me, it was a bit of a so-and-so day mood-wise. So I'm very glad that in addition to that event, there were another 2 yarny events here in London. And on the Wild and Woolly Knit Night, I bought, in addition to that Lettlopi and Debbie Bliss yarn, I got Knit Sonic's new book. I already have her previous book on how to kind of be a bit more inventive with your stranded colour work. And this one is no exception. This was something she actually exhibited at the Meet a Shepherdess event at Edinburgh Yarn Festival, and I got to see all the bunting pieces hung up there. And I knew I was going to get this book. I was like telling her, just like, I will get this book. And this is Stranded Colourwork Playbook, and this is its companion, where I can just colour in a lot of stuff, I think, from this book. I haven't even gone through this book yet because it's been such a busy week. But this is a treasure that I would highly recommend. I am so glad I got these. I have so much time and respect for Felicity Ford's work, so very glad to have these. No idea where to put them because my bookcase is full. More on that in a bit. But yeah, I just thought I'd mention these because they are brilliant. So the last event of this very knitty week was, of course, Love Your Yarn Shop Day, which is, I don't know if it's a global day because it seems like the US has different days for it, but in the UK it's pretty much done all over the place. And I decided initially that I was going to go to a number of yarn shops in London, maybe do my personal little yarn crawl, and my first stop was Wild and Woolly. And I just stayed there. I didn't mean to, but it was such a good event. It was basically just a mingling event. And it's just, that shop is just so comfortable. You don't want to leave. And there was a star of the show, which was Susan Crawford, who was there to sign her book, sell her book, and sell her gorgeous yarn. She's got 3 yarns. It's the Susan Crawford Excelana DK, which was not there because it's being redone. But her Susan Crawford Excelana 4-ply was there in many, many more colours than I've ever seen before. And the Fenella yarn, both of which she gets made by, spun by John Arbon, and then I believe it's being dyed by her or someone on her team. And they're really great yarn. They are worsted spun, so they are a lot smoother than your typical Shetland yarns. So if you want more smooth yarns, and still fairly suitable for colour work, because you know a lot of her pieces for her new book were made in that, that is definitely a yarn I would go for. And she also had this really lovely hand-dyed yarns, which a lot of the great hand dyers of the UK had dyed. You know, as Game Queen and Knitting Goddess and Countess of Bliss, and I think Queen of Pearls, maybe I'm remembering more than had dyed them. But a lot of dyers that I kind of think of as the great ones had dyed those, and they ran out pretty quickly, which I'm glad, because otherwise I would have bought them, and we know I don't need more yarn, and certainly not more red yarn, because the red yarns there were beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Yeah, the event itself was rather crowded, but there's always room for everyone in Well and Woolly. I think that shop is a little bit like the Tardies. It's a small shop but everyone fits, and I don't know how that works, but it just totally does. So I got talking to both Tess, who works with and travelled with Susan Crawford, and Susan Crawford herself, and there was something I was not at all aware of that kind of touched me a little bit, so I am going to share that with you anyway, because you know the story, presumably maybe, of this podcast. I didn't start out doing this as a knitwear designer. I just been asked by the other London yarn shop that I planned on going to, but obviously didn't, Knit with Attitude, if I wanted to do a colour work class, and for that I needed a suitable pattern. And so I had to design a beginner friendly colour work mitten pattern, and that is of course the Saddle mitten pattern that we now know and love. And just by coincidence I'd chosen the most suitable yarn in the shop so that the attendees could knit with the same yarn that I did, and that was Susan Crawford's Excelana DK. And I didn't think much of that. That's what I knitted those mittens with. You've seen those mittens. I've just said that is a yarn I've used, and I made a bundle with yarns that I recommend. And I was not aware of this, but apparently it led to quite an upsurge in the sales of that yarn on a time where, you know, it was basically after Susan's breast cancer treatment, after having had to put her new book on hiatus for a little bit. You know, it was crowdsourced, it was coming, but there'd been a time since new products had come out, and a while until new products would come out, and then you guys helped there to support that yarn and kind of make that be a commodity that was being bought, because like pretty much all the yarns that were being ordered were in pairs of kind of light and kind of dark, you know, things that scream this is going to be a colorwork mitten. And I think for a while they didn't know quite where that was coming from, but it was of course the initial cow for that single mitten, and eventually the full-on mitten club where all the mittens were in DK weight yarns, such as the Excelana DK. So we know the source of the trouble now. That was all of you guys. So thank you so much for supporting that yarn and for buying that yarn for that club and for that knit along. And I'm very happy to have been part of that and been part of like supporting Crawford and her entrepreneurship during that time. That is just a small little story that made me very happy. But generally, yeah, I really enjoyed being at that event, and I got to stay on for longer by very generous Susan and Tess. So they had a private party later on in the day for the people that backed the project, which I intended to do numerous times over. And every time I met with a friend of mine who's been a long time follower of Crawford's work, I was like, oh yeah, I'm totally going to do that, I'm going to support that, and then I just forgot. And this has been the case with so many releases. I can list things where I've just failed at being helpful. So I'm trying to make up for it now by talking about all those things that I find impeccable pieces of work. Truly admire this stuff, and yes, it is time that I'm going to talk about this. Another fridge-sized book. This is the Vintage Shetland project by Susan Crawford, and I've been resisting this book ever since it came out for one stupid reason only. This shelf is full. It is completely full. There's no room for any books. On my desk here, you can't see it, but right here, there's a stack of books that is like this high, because I have no room for these books. The good news is, on a bit of a personal note, is that my wardrobe right in front of us here has broken down. The sliding doors have come off the hinges and the doors are now stuck to one another, and there is no hope. My landlady's husband tried to fix it and just made it worse. So I might get a new wardrobe, which will leave space for a new shelf. So I could totally justify this purchase and many other book purchases now. But that was not the reason I bought this. It took me just like a couple of exchanges with the lady herself to be completely swayed that this is right up my alley. Even if I never knit a single pattern of this, which, you know, I can't guarantee that I'm not going to because there's a lot of stuff in here. But even if I don't, it's so much up my alley. The topics it discusses, I could just eat it. That made no sense. But it's so interesting. It touches upon the history of stranded colour work, you know, comparing across geographical places, especially focusing on the Shetlands, but talking about the Norwegian influence, which I found so interesting, talking about cultural appropriation versus absorption, how there has been that mutual influence, and the stories behind a lot of the designers behind these museum pieces that have been recreated into patterns that you and I can now knit. I have just so much, again, time and respect for this, and oh god, it's so heavy to hold up. It's just great. Like, if you, let me see, up to here is just lots and lots and lots of text, lots of interesting essays and novellas, and I'm sorry I bounced the camera all over the place. All this super interesting material. Then it's a gallery of all the patterns, so you get to see the photos in fairly high definition. This is all photos of the stuff, and I love that. I may have exaggerated. No, that's all photos. So you really get to see what you're knitting. It's not ambiguous photos in the dark here. No, it's good stuff. And the rest is all patterns, and there's so much information here. And my favorite bit, well, one of my many favorite bits about Saturday was all the samples hung out in the shop, because most, if not all, of the samples from this book, I think all of them, were there, and we got to try them on. And forgive me if I get her name wrong, but I believe Theodora, or known as Theo, who has been the model in front of her Susan's previous books, she was there, and I have no idea what she did, but she just, in a sort of relaxing manner, made everyone else feel completely at ease with just trying on every garment on every hanger, whether they fit or not, whether it just made me look weird and chunky wearing this cardigan way too small for me. I've never seen anything like it. People just feeling so at ease with everything that was tried on, and it's just sharing and enthusiasm, and or just people running outside to look at the mirror in the neighboring shop because there aren't any full body mirrors in Weldon Woolley, and it was raining and people walked past and like, what is going on? And they were taking like sort of Charlie's Angel style photos, and guys, it was really special, and I'm so glad I was allowed to stay on, because I wouldn't have missed it for the world. And there's something about when us crafty women get together and when we truly feel inspired and comfortable with one another, magic happens, you guys. And yeah, I got to try on a lot of these pieces, so I want to talk about them for a little bit. I'm just like feeling very inspired, so bear with me. This cardigan here that brilliant Ella Gordon is wearing looked so good on everyone. It would have needed to be bigger on me to actually be able to button up, but the curvature of the shaping of that, if I don't knit that cardigan, I'm gonna be peeking at that for the future, because that is a great shape for me. It was so well fitted to, it looks a bit extreme, but I have a bit of an extreme change between my torso and my wider lower areas, and that looked really flattering with this thing, I have to say. So, and the colors were really nice as well. By the way, check out the interview with Fruity Knitting. The story about this sweater in particular will touch you, just believe me there, that was quite the story. Oh, and this cardigan though, I have so much time for this. This is definitely something I could see myself making. But I think, and this is quite surprising, this is the first thing I would make from this book. I wouldn't wear the hat in that exact way. I'd probably wear it more slouchy, kind of across the back like the other hat I showed you. But the construction here, the way you work these pieces separately, and then you pick up stitches to kind of make them connect and do the crown in the end. I have no idea how that worked, and that's why I want to do it, because I am curious. Oh, and this sweater is beautiful. Sadly, didn't look like it was going to fit me, so not something I tried on. But it looked incredible on Theo, so maybe in a different size, that wouldn't be so foreign to me. But see, this is the cardigan I want to show you. This was the first piece that I tried on, and it looked surprisingly good on me. Like, I didn't get a perfectly good view in the mirror. I'd probably do one size up. The shoulders, the puff shoulders were a bit sort of up here on me. They needed to go further out. I'd probably knit them all together just because of me and puff sleeves. It's not dream team. And I'd probably fit the sleeves a bit more, but they were very comfortable. Aside from that, there was something about this entire color combination and shape that kind of worked on me, and I would not have known that if I hadn't tried on that piece. And this is the one that's on my mind the most. That almost fitted me perfectly. Personally, I might go up a size, but a lot of voices were against that and thought it actually worked pretty well. I'd probably do the sleeves a bit shorter just to avoid some of the puffiness. But yeah, and that is an excellent excuse to splurge on some vanilla yarn, because they have now made a burgundy colorway for it. As if I don't have enough burgundy. I didn't buy it, so I hope I get some cred. And here's a mitten style you might recognize, and it really showcases the mutual exchange between the Shetlands and Norway and Serbia even. There are only a few patterns left in this book now, but I think I'm gonna leave the rest of them up for you to browse on Ravelry. They're all on display there, but you do need to get the book if you want the patterns. But I highly recommend it, because guys, it's been a long time since I just splurged on a big book, a big knitting book with tons of patterns. I used to do that so much more before I bought individual Ravelry patterns, and of course nothing wrong with that. What would I do if you guys didn't? But there's something to be said for having a bunch of knitting books, really. So that was that book in that evening. And another thing that was quite I didn't expect was actually that for once someone had decided to stay on my side of London. Usually when people visit London, they always stay in the West End, but turns out that Tess and Susan were staying here in East London, just a couple of minutes walk away from my house. They actually by accident walked past my house on Sunday, and later we actually met up, and then I got that confirmed. It was just amusing. So got to see the flower market nearby and headed to this vintage shop where they had lovely cake. And guys, I have to say, Susan is so generous with her knowledge, and I'm just sitting there like a sponge sucking it all up, because I am so interested in this stuff. This is just all the stuff in this stuff and things and stuff. The things in that book, the topics she covers, the perspectives she takes are right up my alley, more than I would have ever thought. And I just love listening to all of that stuff, and I'm really keen on more of her work and yarn, and I think we're gonna see more of that in the future. Not that I should be getting yarn, but if it's interesting and if it's good, who's gonna stop me, you know? So that was my week, and now we're kind of back to the dry old academic days, which I need to get back to, and also just update that pattern name and get the hat pattern out and all that kind of boring admin stuff. But I really do hope you guys will just help me out, sort everything, so that the old pattern name does not become a dead end when people are wondering, oh, that's a nice sweater, I wonder where to find it, and you know, you can't find Vinterfjell if you're looking for Blåfjell. So, and I don't even know if I'm allowed to say formerly known as Blåfjell. So yeah, if you want to change your hashtags that you've used on Instagram, just go back to your old post and edit them. It's really easy. You could ask, even if you don't know how to, maybe in the comment section here, and then someone else can help you out. I don't know how much capacity I will try as much as I can, but be aware I have a lot of things now to go back and edit for this to make sure it's all lining up and there's no confusion for people who are now discovering the pattern for the first time. So, and again, if you have any sort of media platform where you have either talked or not about the pattern in the past, if you want to help me spread the word that the name has changed, if it's relevant to your podcast, that would be wonderful. So thank you so much for all of that support. Truly, I have already been in touch with a lot of people about this, and guys, you've been so helpful and supportive and made me feel a lot less scared and threatened by this kind of ridiculous mess, because it's kind of ridiculous, but I'm gonna have to put on my adult hat and deal with it that way, and I'm gonna do that. So I'm gonna turn this to the positive and make sure, you know, we get a matching hat pattern. There's gonna be a child's sweater and who knows what else. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.